Joe Sprocket, his bike goes just like a rocket. Joe Sprocket, his bike goes just like a rocket. One night, Joe Sprocket awoke with the moon shining bright into his bedroom. On the ceiling was a wonderful pattern. It was just the shape of the window frame, but to Joe it looked like a magical landscape. Suddenly, Joe had a great idea. I'm going to fly to the moon. Quietly, he slipped out of bed and got dressed. He put on his warmest jumper and crept down the stairs. Outside, in the back garden, it was so bright he did not have any trouble finding his bike. As he wheeled it through the garden gate, the hinge made a loud squeak. Joe held his breath. He heard his dad cough up in his bedroom, and then all was quiet again. Joe climbed on his bike and pedalled off down the street. When he was a little way out of the village, he whispered the magic words. Hook it, dock it, golden sprocket, make this bike go like a rocket. With a great whoosh, the bike shot down the road. The old headlamp was like a spotlight lighting up the whole street, and in no time at all, the bike was racing up to the steep mountain road. At the top of the mountain, the bike shot off the road and up into the deep blue night sky. Joe steered towards the bright moon and up through the wispy clouds, always faster and faster. Joe looked down. The ground was a long way away. The lights in the towns and villages twinkled like the stars above, and for a second Joe felt a bit dizzy as he could not tell what was up and what was down. Joe flew higher and higher and faster. He could see the edge of the world. It was curved, and the sky became black and filled up with millions of stars. Up ahead, Joe saw a tiny speck growing bigger and bigger. It looked just like the pile of junk in Dad's back garden at home. Joe realised what it was. It was the space station. He put on the brakes and slowed down to have a look. An astronaut was looking out of the window. Joe saw him and waved. The astronaut waved back and then quickly disappeared. Well, Joe did not have time to hang around. He wanted to reach the moon, so he turned his bike towards it and he said, Hook it, dock it, golden sprocket, make this bike go like a rocket. And off he flew. Joe looked behind. He could see a trail of sparks like from the tail of a comet. The moon was in front of him and it was getting bigger and bigger, so he could already see craters and mountains, and he kept a good lookout for a place to land. Joe flew round the moon till he was only just above the surface, and he saw what looked like a car parked with a flag next to it. That looks like a good place to land, thought Joe. Joe Sprocket, his bike goes just like a rocket. Joe Sprocket, his bike goes just like a rocket. Joe was still going very fast as he tried to land. Eventually he managed to land, but the front wheel banged into a big stone half buried in the moon dust. Joe was almost thrown off, and as he came to a standstill, he noticed that the front wheel was all bent. Joe had landed right next to the funny-looking car. It was absolutely still and quiet. Footprints and tyre tracks looked like they'd just been made a few minutes before, but Joe knew they were from a long time ago when men had landed on the moon. In the black sky of the moon, Joe could see the earth shining. He got a bit scared. I think I should be going home soon, but first I have to fix this wheel, thought Joe. He got off his bike and went for a walk around. It felt as though he had big springs tied to his feet, so he had to walk very carefully to stop himself from bouncing up into the sky. He sat in the seat of the moon car and he pressed one of the pedals and it shot forward. Joe quickly jumped off. He did not want to go too far away from his bike. Joe knew there was no air on the moon and he wasn't sure how far the magic of the bike would work. Joe walked around the car and there hanging at the back was just what he needed, a spare wheel. He got his spanner out of the saddlebag and took the wheel off. The moon car wheel was a little bit smaller than the bike wheel, but it seemed to fit all right, and in no time at all, Joe had it all fixed and working. Joe picked up a couple of moon rocks and put them in the saddlebag to take home as souvenirs. In the distance was a very big crater. Joe decided to ride up the side of it to help him take off. "Hock it, dock it, golden sprocket, make this bike go like a rocket." Joe shot off across the plain and up the side of the crater and flew up into space. Joe headed towards the Earth, and soon it was growing closer. He could already make out the shape of Africa and America. Once again the space station came into view, and Joe slowed down to have a look in the window. All the astronauts were sitting on the ceiling watching Star Trek on the television. Joe didn't want to disturb them, so he headed back towards Earth. He began to get a little bit warm as he flew through the atmosphere. The bike seemed to know which way to go, and soon they were flying through the clouds, and Joe could see the lights from the cities and towns, and before he knew where he was flying above his own village. The village was all quiet, so he landed on the main street, and he was soon at his own house. Joe was feeling a bit tired, so he put his bike away and went straight up to bed. The next morning, Dad came into the room. "I'm sorry, Joe, it's raining today, so you won't be able to go out on your bike ride." "Oh, that's all right, Dad. I feel a bit tired anyway." Dad walked out of the room, and then he turned around. "By the way, Joe, when did you paint that front wheel gold?" But Joe had already gone back to sleep. Joe Sprocket, his bike goes just like a rocket. Joe Sprocket, his bike goes just like a rocket.